Spain, a team that ruled the world with their famous tiki-taka 12 years ago, has now dominated Europe with a completely new style. A style where you would see more long balls, rotations, and an unbreakable team chemistry. A chemistry that showcases the creativity of Jamal Williams, technicality of Ruiz Cucurella, and the physicality of Rodri Carvajal, which not only increases their attacking threats, but also forces even top sides to sit deep and defend all the time. And led by an unknown manager and young players, their new tactics dominated almost all the winning favorites to claim the trophy. So what exactly are these new tactics of Spain that made this possible? And how they are reducing their reliance on tiki-taka? Let's discuss in this video. From year 2008 to 2012, Spain was the epicenter of the tiki-taka philosophy, with players like Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets brilliantly implementing this style, in which their ability to maintain close proximity and creating opportunities through intricate passing patterns became Spain's main hallmark. However, the last few years have witnessed a significant evolution in Spain's tactics, as they slowly transitioned from the traditional tiki-taka to a more dynamic and adaptable style of play, where you would see them playing more direct passes, having more ball-carrying dribblers, and shifted their focus from central creations to now relying more on the wider routes, which eventually allowed Spain to maintain their competitive edge in international tournaments. And speaking about their recent tournament, Spain typically set up in a 4-3-3 formation with a maximum width using their wide wingers. However, this setup was far from static, as during the build-up phase, you would see the left center mid dropping back to form a second pivot, while the right midfielder playing more advanced as a shadow 10. And instead of building up with their usual short passes, Spain now employs a unique mixture of long ball and one-touch football simultaneously. For example, if the opposition overloads Spain with high pressing, then they respond by splitting the center-backs wide and allow the keeper to step up, while their pivots and full-backs also drop back to eventually create a 3+4 shape. This setup helps attract the opposition's lines even further forward, which then allows Spain to target the space between the second and third line using long balls. And just before launching their direct pass, Spain's front four then prepares to initiate strategies to beat the last line, where the striker drops deeper to be the first receiver of the ball, and immediately after receiving it, he makes a second touch to the shadow number 10 in front of him. And due to his deep movement, it creates open space for their talented wingers to invert and quickly receive the third touch to roam directly into the clear space. So even while using long balls, Spain immediately applies third-man combinations straight after it. However, if the opposition doesn't engage with this overload and maintains their zonal markings, it becomes harder for Spain to target these lines. So in such cases, Spain employs a clever method of long ball counter-pressing, where they place their front four close to the back line and hit a long ball towards them. And if the opposition manages to receive it, then Spain intensely activates their counter-pressing with their front line, where they try to block all passing angles forward and forces them to go back or sideways. And if they manages to make a forward pass to the second line, then the players involved in the build-up also counter-press from behind. So this method significantly helps them to win the ball back in higher areas and allow them to easily counter-attack the opposition's vulnerable backline. However, apart from using direct approaches, Spain also employs short routes using the same build-up shape, in which they try to create three-man triangles on the wider areas of the pitch. So even if the opposition presses them with their entire front line, Spain eventually moves the ball wider, where they can achieve a 3+2 superiority against them, and then use third-man combinations to easily progress the ball into the second phase. When Spain moves into the attacking half, both Jamal and Williams become the main engines for Spain's attack, who can act as a number 10 winger or even a striker for them. So in order to create space for these wingers, Spain often sacrifices their own fullback's width. For example, whenever they switch sides, you would often see the fullback positioning very narrowly near the half spaces. This creates a central overload and forces the opposition to maintain narrowness, which then leaves the winger with ample amount of space out wide to receive the pass. And when the ball is received by the winger, Spain uses the same fullback as an extra man to create further space for him. And to achieve this, they form a triangular pattern with the number 8 or the center back, where one of these players takes the left back position, while giving complete freedom to the fullback to advance and join the winger as an extra man. And when they both actually meet, they constantly make rotations and create space for each other selflessly. For instance, on the left, when Williams receives the ball out wide, Cucurella makes underlapping runs into the half spaces, drawing an extra marker away from Williams. This movement then creates an open route in the half space for Williams to dribble inside and make his dangerous crosses into the box. However, these rotations do not always happen on both sides. As on the right, it's a completely different story for Spain. As due to the attacking nature of Cucurella, the right back Carvajal usually stays a bit deeper to balance the backline evenly. This forces the right winger Yamal to constantly stay near the touchline, as there is no one like Cucurella to rotate with him. So to solve this, Rodri has to drop deeper as a center back, which then allows more freedom for Carvajal to engage with Yamal. However, alternatively, you might see the left winger Williams roaming in to the opposite flank and join Yamal, while Cucurella takes the left wing position. And just like Cucurella, Williams acts as an extra winger who maintains width and tries to create space for Yamal to invert centrally to do his dribblings.
Inch perfect, just got away from Yamal.
However, apart from wider creations when it comes to creating central chances, then Fabian Ruiz becomes the main playmaker for Spain, who uses his exceptional roaming movements for central creations. For example, when Spain passes the ball around the backline, you would often see Ruiz dropping near the pivot and center back to engage with their ball rotations. This creates an overload at the back and attracts the opposition's first and second lines towards them, which then opens up space between the lines for the third midfielder to run in for a direct pass and exploit the space to move forward. Looking at Spain's tactics out of possession, instead of pressing the opposition with every player like other teams, Spain uses an interesting method of dividing its players into zonal and man pressing. For example, during the opposition's build-up, against stronger sides Spain uses a defensive 4-2-3-1 shape, and against pragmatic side they set up in an aggressive 4-1-2-3 structure. But the common aspect of these shapes is that they divide their players into two approaches, where the front line is given the license to man press if the opposition goes sideways, while the back four and the pivot strictly follow the zonal marking. So even if Spain's first line of press is broken by the opposition, they still have a 4+1 or a 4+2 shape ready to switch into a defensive transition, making them one of the toughest sides in the world to break through. However, when it comes to counter-pressing, due to Spain's high line, they always aim to win the ball within the attacking half. And for that, they use an interesting method that completely suffocates the opposition, in which, when they lose the ball on one side, then Spain quickly brings in their opposite players to compress the opposition on that side and block all passing angles to other areas. This restricts the opposition's ability to maintain healthy possession and puts pressure on them to play direct or go long, often resulting in losing the ball in the process.
To go by Morata, almost on his heels.
At defense out of both centre-backs, Laporte excels in carrying the ball forward, as he often moves near the left flank like a fullback and allows Cucurella to advance further as an extra winger. And speaking of Cucurella, he's more of an attacking wingback than a fullback, who constantly engages with Williams through underlapping or overlapping runs, and always tries to maintain a 2v1 scenario against the opposition's fullback. On the other hand, Carvajal is a more conventional fullback, who occasionally rotates with the right winger, but generally stays deeper to balance the backline due to Cucurella. While in the midfield, Rodri plays as an anchor, acting as a midpoint that connects Spain's two sides to circulate the ball sideways. Also due to his deeper positions, he and Fabian often works to create space between the lines for their attacking partners to operate freely. Speaking about Fabian, he is the main playmaker for Spain who roams all the time, as you often see him creating triangles with the wide players, dropping deep as a pivot to collect the ball, or acting as a shadow striker who can dribble and score exceptional goals. While the right center mid is more of a shadow number 10 for Spain, who usually stays close to the striker and always looks to position himself between the lines to maintain central progression. While on the wing, both Yamal and Williams are exceptionally skilled wingers who can also invert. Their main job is to stretch the opposition's structure as wide as possible, as due to their world-class crossing and dribbling abilities, it attracts more markers towards the flanks, creating gaps in the half spaces for others to underlap. Finally, up front, Morata operates as a pressing forward who aims to disrupt the opposition's build-up from the start, and his primary role is to connect the backline with the wingers by making deep runs and act as an additional passer to maintain superiority across the pitch. Throughout the Euros, Spain were always on the attacking gears, who looked comfortable on the ball and kept circulating the possession fluently. And their main focus was to stretch the opposition as much as possible by maintaining a maximum width with their wingers. At defense, Spain consistently maintained a high defensive line even against strong opposition, and this approach enabled them to implement their counter-pressing overloads effectively. Speaking about final third, due to their dribbling wingers and their highly fluid movements, they prefer to work the ball into the box and run at defense. Finally, with their passing, Spain uses a mixture of short and long passes depending on the opposition's approach in a given scenario. So overall, throughout the Euros, Spain showcased to the world that winning tournaments isn't just about having well-known managers and top players in every position. Instead, it's about having a team with good chemistry, with players willing to sacrifice their own individualism for their teammates. And by reducing their reliance on tiki-taka, Spain's openness to adapt to different styles and different scenarios has made them the most versatile team-oriented side in Spanish history. And just like Spain, if we travel to Germany, Nagelsmann has started a new revolution in German football, where they play with a unique formation featuring 5 midfielders in the center, fullbacks as the only wingers, and each player is uniquely positioned to each other. And using this, Germany has had their best tournament performance in 8 years and became one of the most entertaining sides to watch in the Euros. So what are these new changes happening in German tactics, and how is Nagelsmann rebuilding the team with them? Let's find out by clicking this video. Hope to see you there.